Happy Holidays Barbie 1995 has to do with this Barbie journal of 1919.
Wait, let's start with the boxes here.
We have the different logos. This here is from the late 70s until the early 90s, and then it changes to the 90s logo. This whole series has this kind of old-fashioned stand, and they all have the so-called daisy dark perms. So from this story, let's go way back into my childhood when I was about 6 years old. This has a very crazy backstory that I would like to tell you now and here. It's a super crazy story. So this here was my very first encounter with Happy Holidays Barbie, but I did not know it until 1996. This is the 1988 Happy Holidays Barbie. She's the very first one of this series. As you can see, she is wearing a stunning red dress, a very festive dress for the season. She's the only one of this series that has the superstar jewelry, at least a part of it. Her earrings and her ring are the classical superstar jewelry that we know from the late 70s on, so at least continued for 11 years here. She has blue eyes, maybe a bit dreamy. She has a velvet kind of body and a very, very opulent tulle skirt, along with a silver bow here on her dress to make the look perfect. And in the hair she also has a bow with a little kind of holly berries and holly leaves to make her even look more festive. So this doll was one of the last ones I found for my collection, but as one of the first dolls produced for the grown-up, she is really stunning. She has this little bow here on the front of her box. She has the silver background, making her appearance lighter than some of the other classical playline dolls that were produced for children. So this here is really one of the first ones for adults, and I must say I'm so happy that I finally have her in my collection. So this is for me the classical 80s Barbie. And this is one of the biggest boxes Mattel produced until the late 80s, because they came in this semicircle packages. The children's line had rather rectangular boxes, so this box design might even make you desire this doll as a grown-up. I don't know how it was exactly planned and what they thought when they were doing it, but I think for $35 she was not overpriced, and the quality you got back then was very fine. At least she has a certain wow factor if you have never seen such a Barbie doll before, or if you never had one of these as a child. So this must definitely cause something in your behavior to buy her when you are a real Barbie fan. So I think she is a fantastic example of late 80s Barbies. She means a lot because I have been searching for her very long. I was really glad that I found her in 2010. She was, I think, the last one of this series missing for a while, and I collected them over several years. They are not so easy to find here in Germany. It's rather hard to find them, and I'm glad that I have her in my collection as an example of a classical 80s Barbie inspired by the spirit of the 80s with a lot of glamour. Her hair is cannecalone hair, the hair that you see starting around 1990s, but these dolls already had the cannecalone hair. Cannecalone is very cheap in production and you can put a lot on their heads to make her look like she has a huge amount of hair, which the 90s doll all had. I admit that she's a very nice doll in my collection. She's a nice doll for every collection, but I also would like to show you the back of this doll, of this doll's. As you can see, I have a European box because they have multiple languages on the box, not just one but several. And here you see the first time that these Happy Holidays came with a kind of photo card in their box, something you could display in a frame or you could put it on the wall everywhere you wanted. This is always a kind of prototype that you see here on the back of the boxes. It's sometimes interesting to see that the real doll had a little different appearance than the one on this photo that you got. So let me show you two examples of these Happy Holidays that were only available in Germany for the German market. So what I found for Germany in my Around the World Barbie book is that the Happy Holidays were repackaged in a really big box, and they were offered this kind of store display. I have only seen them once in I think 20 years, but they were sold like you see them in these big boxes in the shop. I'm not sure if this was just one box or if all of them were boxed like this for showcase. But anyway, I have found these and I think you have never seen them before. So here in this journal we always had some news, but we also had prototypes and kind of what we called ghost dolls, because you saw them here in the journal and they never were available in any toy store in our area, and so we thought these dolls were kind of ghost dolls because they were only shown here and then suddenly not available. This here stimulated all your nerves during the year. So it was available twice a year, once in spring and summer and once for autumn and winter. And you see here all the new things that came out that you could buy. My interest in Barbie sank from 1993 to 1996, and I think it's normal when you become older that you develop other interests in other fields. And then suddenly a school fellow of mine brought this catalog here to school. I was so astonished about these dolls that I wanted to become a collector myself, and I gave catalog back to my colleague. I asked my mom if I could also have such a catalog because I liked it so much, and then we went back then to a mail order department store that is not available anymore, and they were the only dealers that had these collector dolls for sale in Germany via mail. And we went to the local shop and I asked if they had something like a catalog for me, and that's what I got. And this is very special because this department store had prices in the catalogs which the number one had not. But this department store also is not existent anymore, so they went for bankruptcy, and somehow this is kind of treasure of its own. This is the same catalog like the little one I have here. It's just smaller, but this one has prices and this one not. Here we have the 1989 doll. She is also in a European box marked with 1990. That happens several times among this series. She is the first one with a polygon-shaped box so that you can see her even better. Of course, the production costs were also higher to just produce these box dolls. She's very glamorous like her 1988 sister, but this year she comes in a white dress that reminds me a little bit of a kind of snowflake. My box here is already yellow, but I don't care. She has these snowflakes on her box, which makes the box somehow very cute. She also came for the first time with an ornament in 1989. You see the dress is different than the 1988 one, and the jewelry has also changed to the one from 1990 here. We don't have the superstar jewelry anymore, but with this year we have a red backdrop, and her jewelry this year is also red. So we have a contrast of red and white, and this snowflake ornament for your own Christmas tree sparkling around. I think that's a very good representation of why I wanted to have this doll in my collection. They all have their own charm in my opinion, so it's very lovely to have them all. They are all different and I'm not sure which one is my favorite. They are all lovely, they are very beautiful, they remind me of something extraordinary, but I can't describe it why I don't have a favorite doll in this. They are all beautiful. And this doll also has the candy cologne hair, as you can see. She has also blue eyes. Let's give her a close-up. But this year the eyes are very different than from 1988. She has more kind of a white eye makeup. It's very bright, and her lipstick is also red in 1989. So she still reminds me a bit more of the 80s than the 90s, and her red backdrop makes this doll very festive, and I don't know if I will ever debox her, because I think this series is looking just great in their boxes, and I have deboxed some of them, but I somehow regret it always when I debox them, so I try to keep them in the box as long as possible. And we still see here the logo from the 70s, so this has not changed yet in 1989. So when you ask me, she has certainly a wow factor when you see her for the first time. When you grew up in the 80s and 90s, I think you will be impressed. I don't know what later generations say, but at least when I would have been a child and I would have seen her somewhere in a toy store, I would have definitively wanted to have her in among my playline dolls, because I think she's just lovely. So the want factor was definitely created by Mattel when they designed this doll, like the one of 1988 also. So the box of my 1989 is yellowed. I have already done a video that it happens to some of the boxes, but not to all of them. I think it doesn't matter how old they are, but this one is yellowed. But under the yellowed plastic we still have the doll with the white dress, and I want to keep her as long as possible in her box. I hope the plastic is not dissolving itself sometime in the future, so that I have to take her out and put her somewhere in one of my showcases, because I think they are looking much better when you have them in their original boxes than in any showcase, because you can't duplicate the background that they came with, and I think that also makes it kind of special, and it somehow destroys the. When you put them out of the boxes, they are still lovely, but something is missing in my mind. On her back you also can see that a photo card is included in her box. You can see what you get. It's a nice prototype photo that we get here. You can see her dress in its full dimensions, and I think it's huge for a Barbie. What makes her also a little bit different from the US boxes is that you have these markings with the 9. It was a case that you could get something for free when you sent enough of these markets to Mattel and then you got something for free. But this doll is also kind of meant that she could be a display case where you could put the doll in bag when you put her in your showcase and you wanted to store her somewhere again. So that's also something you could do with the first boxes. The later boxes don't have this feature anymore, so that's also something you only see in the very first dolls in the series. To my big astonishment, my parents planned to go to one of the next bigger city in the same year. I found this catalog and I went with my parents to the Christmas market and we had a great time there, and there was also a Toys R Us. For all of you who did not know the story, I have never been in any Toys R Us in my life before, so this was a huge surprise for me because I was not used to the toy stores with shelves 5 meters tall and aisles 20 meters long. I have never seen anything like this before. I was so astonished. I'm still astonished by these sizes. I don't know if they still exist anymore. The shop itself does not exist anymore. Maybe it was outdated after the internet became popular and you could buy everything online. The area maybe was too big and that's why they closed the store. Anyway, but I was so excited to see it in my life, and they also had a collector area, not just the normal Playline dolls, but also a collector area, and it was so huge, and I saw a lot of these expensive but very well-made dolls in their great outfits, so everything you can imagine, everything that was out in 1995, 1996, it was so great. I can't tell you how much I still remember this visit. It's so crazy, but it has somehow made it so memorable. I can't describe it in my own words. It was such a huge impression that the store left on me. We did not see her in there, but we also see her 1996 sister. I know she's a 1995 doll, but we saw her 1996 sister, the one with the dark red velvet. So here is a part of the 1990s Happy Holidays Barbie, and I wanted to start with this part of the box because she's the only one that had this logo with the to and from on her box. Her box is a little bit different than the other ones because her top has a different size than her bottom. The bottom is much bigger than the top, and that makes her hard to store. You can see this is really from 1990, and you also see it written on the box. So that's an US box, and in 1919 she was available for the first time in black. The first 2 years she was not available as a black doll. I found this doll. It was much harder to find a blonde version in Germany than the black version, and so I bought the black version. And in 1990 she has again her ornament for the Christmas tree. For me, she's classical 90s Barbie, this pink. You know, this is something I imagine with the 90s. It's very positive. This pink has for me a very positive emotion. I grew up in the 90s, and this is what represents for me Barbie and the 90s. This classical pink Barbie came with in the 90s, which was widespread. This is something Barbie should embody. You see here what everybody thinks Barbie should embody. A lot of positive emotions. She has an absolutely stunning dress. You have the contrast of the black skin and the pink dress, and I think that's very, very lovely, and the skin tone is matching somehow perfectly to her dress, and this gives a very nice and friendly contrast. So, and believe me, this was the first Happy Holiday I ever saw in my life. Not the black version, but the blonde version, the Caucasian version. But this was literally the first Happy Holidays I ever saw in my life. But I did not realize it when I saw her. But I will tell you later more about the background story of this. And something that I like to show you is the back of her box, because it's something that you, I think, would not imagine. So give me a sec here to move the box. You also have the card on her back. And this is something special I would like to tell you about this doll. Yes, the box could also be used as a showcase like her sister's boxes. And she also has a card, but this one is very unique because the back you see here is the magical mansion of the 1990s. It's one of the hardest to find mansions that you could buy for Barbie. This, I don't even know if this was distributed in Europe, but this is one of the hardest to find houses in today's market, and I'd like to show you a pic of the whole thing. It's huge, and if you want to have it, it's not cheap. Yeah, so just wanted to put your attention to this detail here. It was so great, I can't tell you. I was so flabbergasted for some days. I dreamed of this visit so often. Ever since, you can't imagine, it was so great, really so great. I'm still fascinated by it, but I think these toys just don't exist in the way anymore, the way in the 90s. The visit of Toys R Us has a point in my story. And to come to the next point, we went to the Christmas market and it was pre-Christmas time. And believe it or not, my mother ordered this Happy Holidays for me for Christmas. And I had been watching in the catalog so long that she finally decided to order one for me. And I can't tell you how surprised I was when I got her on Christmas Eve. As a normal Playline Barbie doll, this would have costed around 22 euros when she came out in the 90s. And as a comparison, I would like to give you here a comparison and pricing. This was almost 4 times as expensive. I think when I calculated it the correct way, this doll would cost about 82 euros in today's euros from 2022. So that's a huge difference. These dolls were much, much more expensive than the regular Playline ones. And I think that's why only adults started to collect. 1990 brings us the first Barbie, the Happy Holidays Barbie in a green velvet dress. We also had a bit velvet in 1988, but only the bodice was made out of velvet. And here we have the first full velvet gown as a Happy Holiday version. And this kind of dress makes me feel remembered like to a Christmas tree with all her Christmas balls and the shining lights on the Christmas tree. The fairy lights you put on there. Somehow I'm reminded by this Barbie to a Christmas tree. I can't tell you, it's not meant in a negative way, but this is just something very, very fabulous that you would not expect when seeing her for the first time. So she also has a ball ornament on her front and these little sparkling things. You also see she has still the old logo on her box. So I think the change came 1 year later in 1992. So she is the first one with a lot of beads and sequins. Imagine you would have to stitch them on the dress all by yourself. I think that's a huge amount of work, and these dolls are really luxury dolls for their time. So you don't see it on regular Playline Barbie dolls. It's much, much more effort to do this and to show this for mass production, to make this show up for mass production. So this is here a huge effort to make her something very, very special of her own. And she truly is a unique doll. She also has Cologne hair, and this year she has red and silver jewelry. So in her own way, she's a very fabulous doll. I don't know if you can hear my excitement. I'm not so the perfect person to express my feelings in every situation, but I'm really, really, really glad that these dolls were produced and I have them in my collection. So I think from the beginning of 1998, her dresses become more elaborate each year she's produced, and this has certainly a wow factor, but you also see a little bit that the 90s are on their way because of the huge sleeves she has on her dress. I remember my mom wearing such sleeves in the 90s too. It was not for everyday wearing, but somehow they were very popular, and although the dress is very simple, but it's a very stylish dress. And it's a nice combination that I see here. Also have a look at her green eyes. This Happy Holidays has green eyes, and it's a very lovely contrast with her blonde hair. So she's the first green-eyed Happy Holidays Mattel ever made for us. So imagine if you had to sew these sequins onto your own dress. I think you would quit after having it done for 1 hour, maybe after 30 minutes. But this was such a huge amount of work. It was done by hand. I don't think they had machines to do it, and I can't express how crazy expensive it must have been to have this done by hand by any workers in the East, maybe China, maybe Indonesia, or another country in the East that produced these dolls, and they all did it by hand. And even for this huge amount of handwork, they were still sold for a good price, so that you got something that was worth its money. But I think that's widespread in the 90s, that you get worth for the money you paid for the dolls. I don't know how expensive she was. This doll has a green top and a white bottom. I don't know if you can see it. It has two different shaped bottom and top. She also has a red backdrop here, very lovely, very nice. And let's put our attention to her bag for a moment. This is the first one with a little handbag. The first Happy Holidays with a little handbag. Not all of them have handbags. Most of them don't have handbags. But it's still a good thing to have in winter, that you could put your gloves in or something else you needed. So she's very, very lovely. She's the first green one. And the thread backdrops makes the scene somehow a bit dramatic, but still very Christmassy and very, very fabulous to me. So let's have a look at her bag. So here you have another look on her polygon-shaped green top box part and her white bottom. So as you can see, she was planned in a different way here on her photo card. The sequins were planned to go down to where she bends her arm, but somehow they did not produce it in the way you see it here. They were only on the top of her puffy sleeve, as you already saw, so that's a little difference. You see them every now and then on these boxes when you have a closer look. Her earrings are also a bit different than the ones you have seen in the real doll. And this is only a one language box, so no multi-language box and no stamp that you could send in to Mattel. Yeah, I know. For me, she's a perfect representation of winter and a great evening in the pre-Christmas time. I would love to have a look at her more often than I really have, but I think that's what we all experience as collectors. We don't have as much time to have a look at our dolls than we would like to.